Okay, we're going to show you how to create a bracket, a parametric model of a bracket. And this is the bracket that we're actually going to copy. I just grabbed this picture to show you what they're usually used for. This is it's called a stirrup bracket or a post bracket. And basically it's for attaching wood post to concrete, as you can see here, even though this one is designed a little differently. Okay, so this is the bracket we're going to try to build. And to do that, in Revit, we're going to go in and create a family. We're going to create a new family. And we need to pick a template. And since I'm working in feet and inches, I'm going to go English. And then I'm going to scroll down here. And in this case, what I'm going to do is use a generic model. And you'll see several kind of generic models here, templates. And this one, we're going to make this face-based. And the reason we're going to make it face-based is because there's an assumption that the bottom surface of this is going to sit on some face of some geometry. We could make it a floor based, but then the geometry that we set it on would have to be identified as a floor. So I'm just going to keep it more generic and just say, okay, as long as it's got a face there, you can put it on that face. And so I'm going to open this up, and maybe it'll open here in a minute. Okay, here we go. The machine's running a little slow. Must have too many things open at one time. And so this is what it will open up looking like. This is the reference level. This is the base level. Let's go and look at the three-dimensional view real quick. Let's get a better idea. Okay, so here's that surface, and this doesn't show up in your model. This is just to represent the object that this would attach to. So whatever face we put on this surface here or in this direction is the face of the model that we're making that's going to set on the surface. Okay, and so to do that, we need to kind of figure out, well, how are we going to model this? And I've decided, after my analysis of it, that we've basically got a surface right here that's gray. You see that gray surface right there? That's the basic shape of the stirrup. And so what I'm going to do is do this as an extrusion, meaning I'm going to create this surface and then extrude it back to create then the depth to the main object. And then we'll put some holes in it for the bolts. And so to do that, let's go back here to the reference level. And since we're doing this not from the top view of this object, but from the front, I'm going to open the front view. Okay. And you'll see there's my surface that this is going to attach to. I'm going to bring some of this down. You'll notice this is set dimensionally to 1/2 inch. The size of this object is probably going to be, I don't know, 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches by about 6 or 8 inches tall. So it's not going to be very large. So I'm going to change the scaling here so that my text and stuff will be a different. And then I'm going to bring this down. This is the center. This is a given reference plane. And so I'm just going to bring this down so that we can focus in here. And then I need to relock it or repin it so it doesn't move. We don't want that to view. That plane right there is, if you look in the reference view, this plane right here, because we're looking at it from the front view. And then the other plane, of course, is running from right to left or left to right. And that is, we're looking face on to it. And so now let's build our reference here. So we need several different lines or several different reference planes that we're going to use as a reference for our model. And so I'm just going to throw some of these in. I'm going to create a reference plane, And I'm going to create one here and one over here. And those two reference planes represent the location of this outside surface right here, and on the other side, the outside surface right there. Uh, then what I'm going to do is put another reference plane right next to it. So we'll just come in here. Whoops, did it tack it to it? I don't want it to do that. Let's create reference plane. Okay, so I'm going to put another reference plane right here and another reference plane right there. And those two reference planes, okay, represent where I'm going to draw the surface for the inside of this right here. So that those two reference planes, one is the inside surface here and the other is the inside surface there. And so the first thing I'm going to do is make the distance from this to this reference plane equal and give it a parametric dimension. So I'm going to dimension it. I'm going to that dimension to that dimension. Okay. And then I'm going to dimension the thickness of that side. So I'm going to put a dimension there. And I'm going to put a dimension here. Now I want to make all of these dimensions parametric, and I'm going to do that in just a few minutes. The other thing is that I want in this model this line and this line to always be equal distance from the center point. So when I insert it, it will always be the center of the object itself. So I'm going to put another dimension in here, from here to here to here. Okay. And this, I'm going to hit the equal sign and make it equal. And notice it pulled one over to the other and kind of messed this up, but that's okay. We'll fix it. Okay. So I'm going to move this back to the inside of this for right now. Now, so let's set this as a parameter. So if we want this at 5.5 inches, it'll be 5.5 inches. If we want it at 4.5 inches, it'll be 4.5 inches. And so I'm going to select that dimension. And when I do, in a family template, you'll see this little symbol, label dimensioning, show up here. And so I'm going to create a parameter, a dimensioning parameter. I'm going to hit the create button. And when I do, this dialog box is going to pop up. And then I'm going to use the terminology that whoever drew this particular diagram uses, okay, so that I have a standard terminology. So this is a stirrup bracket, SB for stirrup bracket. And you'll notice here that side plate thickness, that's the thickness of this side plate. And then the dimension is called the column width from here to here. So from outside surface here to outside surface here, that's called the column width. Okay. So since the first thing I'm going to do is set the column width, I'm going to type that in, column width. And I'm going to set this as a type and say OK. And you'll notice it now shows a variable here. Okay? And if we go up here into our family types and open this up, a little dialog box is going to pop open, and you'll see there's our dimension parameter, our column width dimension, and it's set to 1 foot 2 inches right now. Now it's never going to be that wide, okay? But I'll fix all of these here in just a minute. Well, let's go ahead and test it. Okay, so let's say we want it to be 5.5 inches wide. So 5.5 inches. I'm going to set that. I'm going to apply this. Okay, and notice that it moved these two in so that they're 5.5 inches and they're an equal distance from the center line here. Then also when it did that, because this was set to a permanent dimension, and the dimension was locked onto there. Then when we move this, it also moved this line with it. Now what we want to do is set this as a parameter too. So we'll just cancel out of this right now. And I'm going to select that dimension. And I'm going to create another parameter. And once again, I'm going to use the name of this, which is the side plate thickness. So I'm going to come over here and type in side dash plate dash thickness. Okay. Now you'll notice that it changed it to 3/4 of an inch. Okay. And if this is in my way, I can just kind of lift it out here so that it's no longer in my way. Okay. Uh, Visually. And now I want to make this equal to whatever this one is. So I'm going to select here, and since they're going to, and just select, since I already have that parameter created, I'm just going to select this. And now you'll notice it moved that line to 3/4 of an inch. Now, actually, we don't want it 3/4 of an inch. That's way too thick. If we look proportionally here at the stirrup, that's probably 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to change the value here from 3/4 to 1/8 of an inch. And to do that, I'm going to click on Family Type and go up here and type in 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and apply that. And notice it moved both of those lines because they're both set to the same parameter. Okay, so now I have the sides set up. And now what I want to do is set up the, whoops, wrong one. Set up what is called the bottom plate, okay, and the top plate. Okay, so the bottom plate and the top plate. So to do that, well, we already have one plane right here. We can see there's a level set here, but there's also, that's the level. But if I go in here and click on that, you can see the reference plane. Okay. And that reference plane, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to call this the surface plane. Okay. So this is the surface that this is going to attach to. So this is the surface plane. And you'll see why I named that here in a minute. Okay. And then I'm going to come back and name these. Okay. So this we're going to call the right. So this is the right reference plane. And we're going to call this plane right here the left reference plane. And once again, it'll become more obvious here in just a minute. Okay. And then I'm going to put a reference line right here. So we're going to create a reference plane. And I'm going to go from here to here. Okay. And that's the top of the bottom plate, right? So it's the top side of this bottom plate right there. And then I'm going to add a couple more. I'm going to add one here. And add one here to represent that top plate. So this is the bottom plate. This is the top plate. Okay. And so we're going to put some dimensions on that. And so, and parameters on that. So the first thing we're going to do is the distance to this top plate. Okay. That line right there, or that dimension, they call that the top plate height. Okay. So I'm going to set that dimension in. So from here to, I'm going to hit the tab key and find that reference plane right there. And we said that was called the top plate height. So I'm going to call it the top plate height. Okay. And it'll be a type and it'll be a dimension. And I'm going to say OK. And now it's going to default to whatever dimension it was before. I can test that to make sure it's going to work. Let's say we wanted this to be 3.5 inches. So 3.5 inches. Okay, and we'll apply that. Okay, and say okay. Now notice this reference line didn't move with it because it hasn't been dimensionally connected to it. I'm just going to move it back down here below it. Okay, so and now the next thing we want is the thickness here and the thickness here. And we're going to assume that those thicknesses are going to be the same. So we're just going to set one dimension for that thickness. Okay, and I'm going to select that here. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's tab till we get the reference line. There we go. Okay. Now, so let's go in. We're going to, once again, create a parameter. And we're going to just call this the plate thickness. Okay, plate thickness, because it's going to be the same for both the top and the bottom plate. Okay, and it's 1/4 inch. Now I can select this dimension and set it to that same parameter, plate thickness, and notice that it adjusted this to a 1/4 inch now too. So they're both 1/4 inch thick. Okay. The only thing we're missing is the height of this, or the only thing at this point of the basic geometry is this height. And this is called the side plate height. Okay, notice that red dimension right there is the side plate height. And so let's do it. And so to do that, we're going to come back in once again, put another reference plane in here. And then I'm going to dimension that. So I can put a parameter to it. And once again, I'm going to tab till I find, there we are, till I find that reference plane. And right now it's set to 9.5 inches, but we'll adjust that in just a second. So I'm going to select that. And we're going to have to create a new one because we don't have the side plate height right now. So we're going to call it side plate height. Okay. And so now we have the side plate height. And so now we have all the reference planes we need for the basic geometry. Oh, my mistake. We don't, because we have it in this view, but we don't have the depth set right now. We don't have references for the dimension from here to there, right? So let's set that up. And to do that, we're going to do that in the top view, or this reference level view. Okay? And we're going to put, once again, we're going to create some reference line planes. Okay, and so we'll put one over here, and we'll put one over here. Okay, and we're going to dimension it. We always want half of the object that we're modeling to be on this side and half to be on this side. So we're going to dimension this to this to this, and go out here and make that equal. Now notice the lettering is too large. It's because we're at 1/2 inch scale proportionally. So I'm going to change this to 3 inches equals 1, 2. And then we're going to put a dimension here and here. Okay. And now we want to set a parameter to that. Well, this is the width. Okay, as you can see here, column width. Okay, so that is the width. And then this is the depth, the column depth. So I'm going to call it column depth. And I'm just going to select that. And see, we got column width right here. And we're going to create a new one called column depth. Column depth. And now column depth. And I'm going to set that equal to the column width. And you'll see it's right there. And so I'm going to set that to backspace 5, and apply. Okay. So now it's basically a square, right? Its width is equal to its depth. If we go back to the front here, but we don't have any geometry in yet. So now what we're going to do is create the geometry for this. And actually, since we have all these reference lines, creating the geometry is going to be really easy and really fast. So to do that, what I want to do is create this profile, this gray profile right here, and then extrude it back that dimension. Okay. So let's go back, and this reference line right here, I'm going to call this, the front, so I can find it here in a minute. Okay, the front. And I'm going to call this one the back. And that way it'll be easier to find them, and you'll see why that's the case here in just a few minutes. So I'm going to go back to the front view, and I'm going to create that profile. And to create that profile, I'm going to first set where I want. I'm going to go up here and say I want to extrude a solid extrusion. Okay. And then it's going to give me the different tools in which to make the profile. But the first thing I'm going to do is set where I want the extrusion to begin. Okay. And so I'm going to go say and set work plane. And I'm going to set the work plane, the beginning of the extrusion. I'm going to set that to front. And that's the reason I named that reference plane front. Okay. And so I'm going to start drawing on that front plane. And to do that, I'm just going to draw a line. And I'm just going to trace it around. So I'm going to click, click. And you'll see it's a kind of magenta line there. Okay. It may be very hard to see, and my screen's not real bright. So I'm not sure how well it'll come out. But all I'm doing is just clicking at the intersections of those different reference planes. Okay. And now that's closed. Okay. So now if I were to extrude this, there wouldn't be that cavity right here, or that hole that we want. Okay. If we go back here to our plate right here, we want this cavity right here. We don't want it to be solid. So what I'm going to do is just put a rectangle in here. I'm going to snap it to here and snap it to there. Okay. And because it's inside of those other extrusion lines, Revit's going to assume that it's a void. And then I'm going to say, okay, make this lock that, lock that, lock that, lock that, and lock that. Okay. So, okay. So the other thing I'm going to do now too is lock some of these other lines to the reference planes. So I'm going to come up here at the top, and you see this line right here. I just clicked on it, and I'm going to move it and bring it back. And when I do, the little lock is going to appear, and I'm going to lock that. So if this line moves, that surface of the object will move with it. Okay. And the same thing I want to do over here. So I'm going to move it out, move it back in, and it's locked. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. So I'm going to lock it. So now if that height changes, this dimension changes. Then this one right here, I'm going to do the same thing, move it in and out till I get and lock it. And I'm going to move this one in and out and lock it. And then let's see, what is it? And then this one in and out and lock it. And run this outside surface in and out and lock it. Okay. Dimensions would over constrain the sketch. So I'm just going to say cancel. Okay. Because I don't want to over constrain the. Okay. So the key is that this is locked and this interior ones don't need to be because they're going to be tied to those other dimensions. Okay. So did it delete my dimensions? No, it didn't. So there's the side plate thickness, right? And now I'm going to say, let's just extrude this. So I'm going to extrusion. And what it did is it created an extruded object. Let's go into the view and we can see right here. And of course it's too thick, but we're going to fix that in just a second. Okay. Well, we've got our extruded object now. Okay. And we can see, turn it on shaded. Okay. And so now we can see those surfaces. And then we're going to come back. Okay. And in our reference level, our top view, we're going to take our extruded object and we're going to lock it to that depth so that the depth here will define the amount of this that's extruded. Okay, so now we have our basic geometry and we can change its dimensions, the thickness of the plates, and we can play with it a little bit just to flex it a little bit just to show you. Okay, so let's go in here to the family type and the parameters and say, for instance, this was instead of a 5.5 inch column, we were going to use and make it a 3.5 inch column. Okay. And we can apply that. And notice now those two dimensions were changed. It's now 3.5 inches instead of 5.5 inches. We could change the thickness of the plates, both the top and the bottom plate. So anyway, that's the basic geometry. The next thing we want to do is put holes in it. And I'm going to stop this video and do another video showing you how to put the bolt holes into it.